Yeah. So the COVID thing has put a just a in some ways it's a challenge. How do we continue our livelihood? How do we continue business? But we're still hearing news reports of massive amounts of deaths, you know, in Italy and now, you know, New York is having to deal with this. So how do we deal with the fear aspect? And then of course, you know, we're in the microbiome space, and we know that this connection between the gut and the brain, and we know that it's really our gut that is in control of our emotions. And that's why I thought it would be really interesting to have a therapist talk about the other side of dealing with emotions. And that's, I think, going to be really interesting. I'm going to pull up Cyndi's file here and tell you a little bit here. Okay.
We got lots of folks here. Good morning, everybody.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. So Cyndi Collen is a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Texas. She holds an undergraduate and graduate degree in social work from the University of Texas in Austin, and owns Flourish Psychotherapy and Nutrition in Austin, Texas. And she lives very cleanly, has a simplistic lifestyle, and is very interested in functional medicine, reducing environmental toxins, keeping the home and body healthy, and uses the microbiome products. And she's going to kind of pull it all together on how we are going to deal with this whole COVID situation, and discussing the whole autonomic nervous system and how we can keep that healthy. So the first question that I wanted to ask is, when it comes to having a healthy gut and microbiome, how do you talk to your clients in terms of keeping healthy and how that will affect the autonomic nervous system?
Well, that's a good question. And actually what I might want to do is flip it around a little bit, which is in psychotherapy, the autonomic nervous system, which I labeled the danger detection system, is that I talk about its role in how to maintain good gut health. And so the first thing that we need to do is just to be mindful that we have this danger detection system on board. It is this thing that's not meant to annoy us. Lots of folks are like, I just want it to stop. I want this, you know, panic feeling or anxiety. I want to go away. I'm sick of it. I hate it. And I will flip it and talk about, well, what we need to do is embrace it. This is your body's way of telling you that there's danger somewhere, even if it's not real to you or feels rational, that we want to just thank you, body, for letting me know that there's some type of threat, perceived or real, out there. And thank you for letting me know, because that's what your body's trying to do. It's trying to get your attention in many different ways. And so if we can accept and allow the danger detection system to be there, then what we can do is talk about how can we nourish it? How can we be flexible? I often refer to the ladder of our autonomic nervous system, which is we've got parasympathetic or ventral vagal on the top. We have sympathetic, which is fight or flight, in the middle, and that's where anxiety and feeling overwhelmed and confused and even avoidant at some times comes from. And then we've got at the bottom of the ladder, we have dorsal vagal, where we feel collapse and withdrawn and isolated even. We want to numb, and we're very disconnected from our feelings. And I say that's where depression hangs out, where all the hopelessness is. And so we're meant to go up and down this ladder throughout the day as a way to respond and interact and be resilient with our environment. And if we can really note that it's there, then we can start to talk about the microbiome after that, because the vagus nerve is what connects us, is the messaging superhighway that connects us on the ladder that we go up and down all day. And if the vagus nerve is rooted in our microbiome, then it's really helpful for us to nourish the microbiome so we can be able to have resiliency and even a sense of ease and grace even when there's a crisis.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about resiliency against stress, what are some helpful practices you would recommend?
Well, breathe, and breathe.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, and 3. Three things is breathe, and not just breathe, but breathe mindfully. Breathe through your belly. Be able to extend your exhale as long as you can, really squeezing out every last breath, because not only a really nice full belly breath and a really elongated exhale gives signals to our danger detection system that you're really safe. And also social engagement, which is wild because that's really hard to do when we've got social distancing in place.
Mm-hmm.
So we are wired to be connected to other humans. Our interpersonal neurobiology is dependent on others, on other nervous systems around us. So even right now, if it's hard for social engagement, making sure you're doing some type of video so you can see people's faces, you can hopefully see people in the eyes, but then giving yourself a hug in place of somebody else hugging you can be really helpful. If you have pets around, really having them on you, feeling their warmth, feeling their touch. So between breathing and connecting with others that you feel safe around, those are ways to really help you. And I mean, be resilient. That means that be aware that this is really scary. This COVID-19 threat to my health, to my economic situation, to the future, to even my way of life, that threat is real, and allowing the fear and uncertainty to be there. And then using, breath and engagement with others as a way to help you hold the feels that are coming up for that. So that's what I mean about flexibility, being able to go in and out of fear, holding it, and then knowing that it's still there, and then hopefully having some ease about it. Like, okay, it's really there. This is really happening. So that's the ease that I'm talking about.
Super. Now, what is it that you would educate your patients about gut health and how do you tell them how that affects their emotional well-being?
Well, y'all probably know this. Y'all are with Microbiome Labs,
Mm-hmm.
but it is amazing when I say to folks that, did you know that 95% of your serotonin is made in your gut? They're like, what? I thought that I was supposed to take an antidepressant, right? Like, I didn't even know I could do anything else. I thought the only way to get serotonin working for you is to take an SSRI. And so I jokingly say, we were not born with a Prozac deficiency, right? We and when we think of the role that psychiatric meds have, or not even a role, but let's say the marketing messages from the pharmaceutical companies, and even from doctors are like, oh, it's so simple, you're feeling depressed, you're really tired, you really lost interest, you either have too big of an appetite or you don't want to eat, you must be depressed, so you need to take this drug that's going to increase this serotonin in your brain. It's a super simple thing to do. And then of course they take the SSRI, and then I'll get lots of folks that will be in and say, it wasn't working after a few weeks or after a few months, so we upped the dose, and then that wasn't working after a while, and so then the doctor added this one or added that one. And this entire time, nobody is talking to the patient about, what are you eating, right? Mm-hmm. And so when they're just so focused that this is a brain problem, we have to fart around with the chemicals and find a mix to get that healthy. When I start to bring it back to, well, what if we really understood the body differently, and that these chemicals that you're talking about are made by the body and discarded by the body every day. And if we have a healthier environment for these chemicals to be made, then they'll be more in balance, and we'll be able to eliminate them as neurotoxins when they die, because we have to make new neurotransmitters, new chemicals all the time. And if we take drugs that interfere with the natural process, then we're kind of doing more harm than good, because these chemicals, these synthetic chemicals, end up circulating in us quite a while. And I mean, we could talk the whole day, you know, on psychiatric medication, because what I say to a lot of folks, if you are taking either one drug or a bunch of drugs and you are still depressed or you are still anxious, then why are you still taking the medication? Right? It's not as simple like, I don't believe it works for you. It's, if you still have the symptoms and they don't go away, then maybe it's time to get off of the medication, which is a whole nother thing, because that could take months and months and months, sometimes even years. And then we really try to work on gut health. So when you say, how do I talk to patients about it? A lot of times it varies on where folks are, with their understanding, and because what I talk about is very different than what they're hearing from their doctors. And so even what I might try to do if they're on medication, or thinking about medication, I say, let's just try some simple things first. And we usually try to start with being mindful of, how many times do you move your bowels a day? Do you move your bowels a day? That's a standard intake question I have with every single client that comes into Flourish, and even the other practitioners, I encourage them to ask. And usually folks are like, I don't understand why you're asking me that. And it will usually be that if somebody tells me that they're constipated or they've had IBS for years, is that there's always this, and I've also had anxiety for years.
Yes.
And they usually start around the same time. So that's how I start connecting them to gut health, because it's such a complicated, let's say, topic to talk about. And it, again, my perspective can bounce against what they've learned. So I usually start with bowel movements. I usually start with things like, do you get bloated or feel gassy, or just like full or not wanting to eat? I usually start there with understanding, and then I'll go to sleep as well. What's your sleep like? Is it hard to go to sleep, hard to stay asleep? What do you feel like in the morning? And that's what I start to bring into their awareness of gut health and connection to their mood.
Yes, and in the practitioner space with microbiome, even biological dentists, they will comment on how their patients are not used to their doctors starting with, you know, let's take a stool test, let's talk about bowel movements, and they're, I'm here for my teeth, or I'm here for my emotions. Why are you wanting to look at what's, you know, in my stool test? You know, but they're realizing that, you know, that's where the clues are. You know, what's happening in the microbiome affects so much of the body. There's a great song. If you ever watch the series Scrubs, they did a musical called Poo Song. And in the series, of course, was taking place in the hospital, and everyone on the hospital staff is singing, it's all about the poo, you have to look at the poo. But we used to play that song in our practice just to
need to find that, Tracy.
Yes, just put Scrubs Poo Song and it will come up on YouTube.
Yes. And, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a great way, you know, most people, especially in the older generations, have a difficult time talking about their poo. So it's a way of warming up to them, getting them comfortable, you know, so you could talk about size and shape. And after listening to the song and having that poo conversation, then they were taking pictures, and then it was almost too much information, but at least it broke down that barrier, because it's so important to get people to talk. So, and I attended the IMMH, which had to do with the International Mental Health Show. And I was shocked that there was this movement of therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists moving into the microbiome space. So how much of a percentage would you say in your world there are these functional medicine psychotherapists versus the conventional?
The percentage is way too small, Tracy. I was at IMMH this summer too. I've been wanting to go for years and was so happy to be able to go. And when I think that the keynote address, when they asked, you know, how many of you are therapists, right? I raised my hand that there was not that many, not that many there. But there were, you know, a whole lot of, you know, psychiatrists, which gave me some hope. But also here in Austin, actually, when I went through the IMMH, I put my, you know, Austin in there, and there's a whole bunch of folks who have attended IMMH in the past, and some of them therapists. And what I tried to do at Flourish is I tried to do some continuing education workshops, connecting, you know, getting them this more information, and just trying to really even work with other therapists to refer folks to me, even for the nutritional piece. Because we are trying to bring those two together. But we are lucky here in Austin. We have a few integrative psychiatrists that are looking at that. And we are also very lucky. We have, you know, whether they're restaurants when they're open, or, you know, we are the hometown of Whole Foods. I mean, I send all of my clients to Whole Foods, and only because that it's, you know, it's an easy way to nourish your microbiome by going to a place that has a really wide choice, obviously, of organic, fresh produce. And, you know, that I think right now, like what we're looking at here is we have this great opportunity. You're already making your food at home. And so I'm trying to even we're doing some free webinars, some low cost webinars. I'm trying to get it out to therapists here in town as well, to say this is a time to get some clients to focus on what they're eating, because the opposite could be happening, that, you know, oh, well, I am at home, so I'm going to do some frozen pizzas and make cookies, and, you know, and we've been talking about how that's going to injure your microbiome. And it's so scary out there that what you're eating could make you feel worse, could make mental health symptoms, you know, really intensify. And then you start to talk about leaky gut and its connection to depression and anxiety. And I'm like, and when we feed that leaky gut more leaky stuff, and oh my goodness, you know, it's going to be really hard to bounce back once this shelter in place order is lifted, because it will be lifted, and we need to be able to be prepared for that. And that's the hard thing. So good question, but not enough of us mental health professionals are learning this really important stuff.
And we're all about research, and we have been talking with a mental health person in Chicago area, and I don't know how close we are to getting this study, but she was very interested early on in you know, looking at the serotonin and just some of the levels of the neurotransmitters in the gut when you've been using microbiome lab products. So we know that the spores actually produce serotonin and dopamine. And we know that because so many doctors across the country are using the products and have been reporting that sometimes the first thing people realize when they are dealing with their gut issues is that they feel better and that they're happier or they're calmer.
Right.
What have you experienced, you know, with your patients, and are they amazed or are they commenting on how their mental health issues are related to their gut?
Some are amazed, because the biggest thing that they end up doing is they end up having more bowel movements. I go coming back to poo. And then we're a mindfulness-based practice. And so when I talk about, you know, gut health, and you talk about, even if it's taking products, but really trying to be mindful of what's happening in your body is the key, because they could be taking products and not even noticing that they're feeling better, right? So what we try to do is do things like some mood logs. So when you start, whether it be therapy or some type of practice, or just really trying to start to connect to what is the quality of my sleep, what is my mood like, you know, scale from 1 to 7, what type of energy do I have? Now, again, most people that have been diagnosed with depression From my lens, that they have fatigue, they have chronic fatigue, they do not have depression. And when you start nourishing the microbiome, all of a sudden you have more energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that lethargic, heavy feeling that it's really hard to get up and do things that you have always thought or labeled that, oh, this is my depression here, and all of a sudden I'm feeling like, like I can get up and I have more interest in things. Well, that's really what we start looking at. So again, are we eliminating are you eliminating now almost every day when it was maybe a couple times a week? That's what we have folks notice. And then also where is mood and where's their energy level? And sleep is a big one too. And of course, if you start taking some really good, and of course I love the Mega Pre, is that the prebiotic
Right.
stuff, the prebiotic supplement for microbiome labs, that helps with sleep. And when people are actually being able to sleep, more restoratively, they're just like, this didn't come from, Ambien. Like I can take this and I can sleep better. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Does you take the prebiotic with the probiotic?
I usually have folks, yes, doing both of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we know microbiome labs.
It's hard.
Well, just gonna say they're strong. So usually people will titrate on one and then start the other, just so that
Yes.
Some people can't take the full
Yes.
dose right away.
Oh, we do sprinkles.
Mm-hmm.
Sprinkles. I have a phase-in plan because, again, when folks also have mental health symptoms, that it's also very overwhelming for them to start multiple things at once. And so we do little bits, like sometimes I might start little sprinkles of the prebiotic for a few weeks before we even add something else, right? We're all about do it slowly, be mindful about what's happening.
Yeah.
The Megaspore is very good.
Oh yeah.
Right. Right.
And Dr. Kevin he terms it dusting. He will dust the food, with the products. And so I hear different terms: sprinkling, dusting. So everyone has their own description. One of the things that I think people are amazed with when I usually talk to them about the fact that there are more bacteria on their body than actual human cells. So when you are really looking at, we are more bacteria than we are human. So when we're talking about emotions, we're realizing that a lot of these organisms have a role in affecting how we feel. We know that Candida is a very pervasive organism, and when it excretes these exotoxins, most people feel miserable. I've seen women break down in tears. I've seen people get real aggressive. I see them talking about this, heavy, foggy thinking. And so some of these organisms, so the question is it the bugs in me that are making me feel bad, or is it really me? So have you come up against this or talked to people about this, or how do you approach that?
Well, from a therapy standpoint, there's really only, I can really talk about it in I want to say a little bit of a different language. Now I use a lot of acceptance and commitment therapy, which has you shifting your relationship with your thoughts. And so, when you're feeling lonely, when you're feeling hopeless, what we work on, it doesn't mean that you are a hopeless person. So the feels that you're feeling, we really try to work a lot on that they don't necessarily define who you are. We are wired to feel, and the feels come and go. And so that's how we tried to kind of shift folks' perspective of how to really connect to what's happening within them, right? Because if I spend too much time in the medical and in the you know, as, let's say, as a patient, if I really, you know, more therapeutic relationship with them as a client, then we can then we can maybe have them interested in starting to make the connections between their health, right? Their overall health. Does that make sense, Tracy? Like,
Yes.
it's, you know, most clients, I mean, I have very few that will want to spend the entire session really talking about their health in a medical way. You know, so what they want to do is really talk about their overall well-being and, you know, what it feels like to experience what they're experiencing. And so the feelings of, I'm an anxiety and depression specialist. And so stress is a part of that, and relationship challenges all come into that. And when we start to really look at the whole picture about the feels and how can you cope better with the feels, usually, you know, we see people over a long term. And so if they're starting to do some really good work, and when I mean good work, that when you're in therapy, it's hard. It can be painful to have this awareness and to do the work outside of the therapy room, you know, some introspection, some maybe saying things to people in a kind way that you're not used to saying things, to put up some boundaries. But once they start doing some of that work, but we still find that there's still some challenges, that they're still feeling really stressed, or it's really still hard to sleep, or that there's still panic or really intense episodes of feeling hopeless, then that's when I start to say, well, we really need to pay attention to what's going on in your body, because that means that we've got some dysfunction. We have something going on that we're not paying attention to.
Okay, Cyndi, if it's okay, I'm going to open up the floor for our attendees and see what questions they have for you. If any of you are dealing with clients that have mental health issues, go ahead and ask Cyndi maybe some, get her feedback here. This is a great opportunity to find out, you know, some different approaches. Don't be shy.
I love the laddering. I love the laddering that you described, Cyndi. I've never heard it described that way, and I thought that was very helpful. So what products have you found you use the most in your practice that you've had the best success with?
Well, the Megaspore is the go-to. I'd like every single person, you know, to be on them and to titrate up, and we even try to keep some in the office. I'm starting to really, you know, we're doing these webinars because of what's happening right now, and I'm starting to get folks' attention on immunity. And so we've been doing a lot about leaky gut and really having them understand leaky gut. So I think that some of the mucosa will start to be able to bring more of that in for folks that, you know, because they have a better understanding of it. Or let's say there's more motivation right now. But quite honestly, it's, you know, it's really hard to have folks embrace, you know, hearing some of this from your psychotherapist, because again, they are not hearing this from their doctors. And even a lot of my folks don't have health insurance. And so I am their go-to. I am the person that sees them. And if they don't have health insurance, we even get them basic blood work to even have them even consider a basic multivitamin. That takes a lot of time for me to get folks to even take a multivitamin. So again, I think that what we're having now with the threat of COVID-19 and the unpredictability of it, who, you know, you don't know if you do get it, if it's going to be mild or not. So I more of our clients are being more open to, you know, maybe taking some supplements that might help them, you know, be healthier, right? Or fight something.
I suppose with hearing in the news, it might be the first time that they've had to think about immunity. And if the connection is made to those who have more inflammation are going to be more at risk. And if the connection is made, the inflammation starts in the gut, then all of this starts to come together and make sense that they need to seal their gut to stop that inflammation.
You bring up an excellent point. I have a couple groups also that I do, and a lot of my clients are younger. They're in 20s and 30s, and so when this COVID-19 first started happening, they were like, "Oh yeah, it's just for old people." I'm like, "Oh no, it's not." And when I looked at folks and I said, every single one of my clients is at risk, because if you are presenting with mental health symptoms, especially anxiety and depression, that means you have inflammation, right? And it's not, in other words, if you don't have situational anxiety or depression, which means, something happened, an event happened, or, there's some job loss or like a death in the family or someone's sick, that would be more situational. But when your symptoms are chronic, then we know that the body is inflamed in some way. And so when they heard that, it's like, y'all are at risk, because if you have these symptoms and it's been going on for quite some time, you've got underlying inflammation that is not being treated, that is not diagnosed, that is not, you're not aware of, and I'm trying to make you aware of it, right? And that is hitting home for a lot of them. So that was a good point, Tracy.
Yeah, young people feel invincible, I guess, even when they come in for, counseling. It has to be pointed out to them. Inflammation is a real thing.
It is.
This is Deb. I have a question about the immune system. So how would you explain, is there a way to explain, other than reducing inflammation, how it would help the immune system be stronger?
I'm sorry, did you, can you maybe rephrase that and so that I understand what you, a little bit more?
If your patient asks how taking the products would help the immune system, is there a way to describe it other than talking about reducing inflammation?
Well, I talk about it in terms of the vagus nerve, because we talk a lot in our practice about the vagus nerve, because I'm a polyvagal theory practitioner. It guides a lot of my work, which is where the ladder comes from. I didn't create the ladder, but there was another awesome therapist that created it to explain the polyvagal theory. So when we start to really talk about vagus nerve, and we actually do exercises and breathing in order to activate it, the vagus nerve, and improve vagal tone, when we talk about how inflammation in the gut can affect the function of the vagus nerve, and if they understand how the vagus nerve is connected to anxiety and depression, then we start to get their buy-in of that's the inflammation that that maybe is happening with me, and I need to do something about it. So does that make sense, Deb?
Yes.
Like we try to tie it in to that information superhighway that's going in between the gut and the brain, so that they get this understanding that your brain isn't broken. So many folks come in, thinking, I'm broken, my brain is broken, my brain doesn't work right. I'm broken because my brain can't stop thinking of these things. And when we start saying, but what about the brain and your gut, and how can we nourish that in order to have you know that you can't just fix your brain and your head, but we can nourish your body, especially your gut, and maybe your brain, that has lots of neuroplasticity, can respond in a healthier way.
That's excellent. Thanks.
Now, I was told there's
I
some
have a question.
Go ahead, Catherine.
I was looking at Consumer Labs yesterday, and they were listing the things that were possible treatments for, that might help the body with the coronavirus.
Yes.
But it does not say that. It says that probiotics do not help, but then, they help the immune system. So how do you, why did they say that, I wonder?
Because it's not a pharmaceutical.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah, I think in this space we've
Oh, just
learned,
because it's not a pharmaceutical?
Well, and there's a lot of difference between probiotics and spore probiotics. And that's, I think, why a lot of people realize spore probiotics colonize and other probiotics usually don't make it past the stomach. So there's a receptor, what they call metabolic response from these others. There is a limited protection or limited response, but it's nothing compared to something that colonizes in the gut. So you have to always suspicion when the general statement probiotics is used, know that 98% of them aren't the spore probiotics. And Cyndi, I had a question on the vagus nerve. I was told there was some simple things that you can do to stimulate your vagus nerve, singing and humming and gargling. Do you have other response on?
Oh, you're hitting all my favorites. I'm a certified Kundalini yoga teacher. I don't teach it outside of the therapy room, but I do bring aspects of it. And there's so many good stuff in Kundalini yoga that can activate the vagus nerve. And after I took the teacher training course years ago. And then the more I'm reading about the vagus nerve, I'm like, oh my God, so much of Kundalini yoga sequences are about developing vagal tone. So lots of good different types of breath. You know, I talk about the belly breathing is probably the biggest one I like to do for vagal tone and activating the vagus nerve. Humming, we do, like when we're doing in groups and with clients, we'll try to do some really deep breaths with an om as the exhale. So kind of vibrating even, sounds in your chest as you're exhaling. So kind of like humming, but that can activate vagus nerve. You're absolutely right. I talk about gargling and singing in the car and putting on a really good song that really can allow you to sing and have lots of good, deep, long exhales, like really lots of long notes that you can do. So not only, when we think about vibrating sound within us, but also hearing sound. So vagus nerve can be developed tone by certain audio sounds, and listening to Mozart can be really nice and can activate and develop vagal tone. And I want to say things like listening to birds, right? Like really being able to be out in the environment and being able to listen to the cacophony of different birds, because their frequencies can be kind of soothing in a way. And even having a partner talking to you in a soothing voice. And so the prosody of someone else's voice can also help develop vagal tone and soothe as well.
Super. And have you found that the working with the vagus nerve helps the migrating motor complex that may help sleep?
Well, in some folks, yes. I have some folks that have got, I think, some other dysfunction, but even sometimes what we'll talk about, if you're having a hard time either falling asleep or or waking up in the middle of the night, I'll ask folks to, also another thing for vagus nerve is laying on your side. I'm like going to do it right now on your right side, because that allows the diaphragm to really be able to fully extend and breathe well, and that can help for vagus nerve. But doing, Kundalini yoga, so breath of fire. I love breath of fire to help you to go to sleep, which kind of sounds counterintuitive, because it can give you some energy, but it can restore breathing patterns. And then also, I'm going like this, just doing left nostril breathing. That activates almost a parasympathetic or ventral vagal response in the body. It opens up an energy channel that helps to soothe that. So these are ways we work with the vagus nerve to try to encourage sleep.
Interesting. Never heard that. Did anybody else have questions about vagal nerve stimulation, or have you been talking to your clients about that? Because it's true that that a lot of that lipopolysaccharide, which causes inflammation, can travel up the vagus nerve and affect, you know, the brain and so forth. So I'm wondering, you know, how much people are really focused on, you know, what are you, when you're stimulating the vagus nerve, of course you're getting all of the good aspects, but probably a healthy, someone who has been practicing vagal nerve stimulation will be better in touch with their body if they, you know, encounter some of the lipopolysaccharide or perhaps some of the negative aspects. They would be better in tune to determining, you know, which is which, or telling the difference. Okay. Well, I think we might have.
I was going to share. I was just going to share. I'm recently reading Joe Dispenza's book, Becoming Supernatural, and he talked about in there one of the workshops that he did, them measuring secretory IgA at the beginning of the workshop, and then for at least a minimum of 10 minutes, 3 times a day, they were using the more upregulating emotions like joy, inspiration, things like that, to focus on just 10 minutes, 3 times a day, increase secretory IgA by as much as 49%. And some people's secretory IgA was measuring like at 100, which I think the normal range is 30 to 70 or something. But secretory IgA is on all of our mucous, you know, the sinus, the mouth, the gut. And if we're upregulating that part of the immune system, that's going to also fortify us and make us, you know, more resilient and resistant to this virus as well.
That's fascinating.
It was. I loved it. The timing couldn't have been better to have read that for it to stay with me.
I would so love to see that for sure.
Yeah, I took a picture of the couple of pages out of there, and I'm happy to send them to Tracy so she can.
That'd be great. That's so fascinating. You know, I often talk about how gratitude and compassion are great equalizers, and how to connect to joy, you know, every day. And actually, the one thing we didn't talk about for vagus nerve is laughing. Laughing is super great for vagal tone and activating it, and especially belly laughing, like really laughing heartily from your belly. So I have literally like written a fake prescription out to a client. I want you to laugh for 20 minutes every day, right? You know, as a way. So to your point about, you know, really finding joy, finding laughter, compassion and gratitude can light us, can help our brain get out of established crappy neural pathways. Right. And that there's not enough research, there's not enough done about it, but then it's really hard to connect to it. And the one thing I wanted to talk about though, that right now, and this is, you know, I looked at my notes and I sorry, I forgot about this earlier, but what I find to be really important about the ladder that we were talking about for the autonomic nervous system is that most of y'all know on here that what happens that when we're in sympathetic, when those pathways are activated, digestion is turned off. And so what we've been focusing a lot on that because when you're also in dorsal vagal, which is the bottom of the ladder, you're very disconnected. So you don't even know that you are in what the polyvagal theory talks about, a neuroception of danger. And so right now with COVID-19, if most everybody is in a neuroception of danger, which means that your unconscious body is aware that there are threats, really big threats to your health and your economic security. And these are our basic ways of survival. And so if it's really hard, if your body cannot really, your body, your brain, your wholeness cannot really cope with the enormity of this threat and what to do, some people might call it a freeze. but you can go into dorsal vagal, activate the dorsal vagal pathways, which then disconnects you from feeling anything. So you might be I'm fine, I am fine, but body is in a state to where digestion is turned off, right? Any type of desire to nourish yourself or care for yourself is turned off, because you are now in your reptilian part of your autonomic nervous system, which is just preparing you to possibly die or allowing you to wait until the threat is over. So, you know, you think about the turtle, dorsal vagal is the back part of our shoulders where that vagus nerve part is activated, and it comes in, so protects our chest. And so think about the turtle going into their shell and only poking their head out to say, is it safe out here? Is it safe? No, I'm going to go back in here. And in that reptilian way, we're not breathing as much. We're really not digesting as much, right? We're turning off that need for food. And so, and yes, the dorsal vagal is the freeze response. It is that for sure. And so, but what I think about is, so this is where the gut connection comes in. If our digestion is turned off and we're not even aware of it, and we don't have mindful awareness of our body, but we're still kind of eating and we're still doing things that I'm like, there we have leaky gut conditions abound, right? When digestion is turned off and we're still eating, and we're maybe even eating comfort foods. Hi there.
So I think we've made some great, hi, Dr. Sam. We've been making some great connections, how important.
Yes, thank you, Tracy.
We've been talking about stimulating the vagus nerve through laughter, through humming, spirituality, supernatural. We've covered a lot of topics here, and I think they're all really important. And do we have any more questions?
Wow.
Well, I will make this.
Cyndi, what is your website?
You can find our practice at flourishin.austin.com.
Thank you.
We also have got a lot of Instagram content. We also talk lots and lots about the connection between the gut and the brain on there, and nutrition.
Great.
I have a question for you that's appropriate right now. If not, I'll save it.
I'm sorry, you have a question? Is this Elizabeth?
Yes, I had a question for Tracy, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate right now. So if not, I'll save it.
Well, go ahead. We'll see if I can work it into this topic.
I had a client who was on mega mucosa. I was trying to support his mucosal barrier. And, I don't know where that music is coming from.
Yeah,
sorry, I don't think it's my
right.
house. And he started having about a week into it, started having this sort of weird allergic reaction where he got what we get flush on the back of his hands and on his face. So I had him stop taking. I really like for him to take it. Is that something about titration, or is that something that you hear a lot? What is that?
Well, what I've learned about the microbiome is that anything can and usually does happen. And when you're trying to affect the microbiome, if the pathogens don't want to be evicted from their home. And so, for instance, Candida will release exotoxins, and it will look like sensitivities because it can affect the skin, the gut, and make everything worse. So a lot of it is just going slow enough so that the body can adjust, and helping to improve the immune system. You know, when you have inflammation, when you have gut damage, you also have a damaged immune system. And the immune system is our body's recognition. And when the body doesn't recognize something, it starts fighting back. We know that the spores help rebuild and improve the immune system, but you have to go slow enough. And so usually it does come to slower titration, sometimes adding mega IgG 2000, which is concentrated immunoglobulins that help modulate the immune system and attach to the exotoxins that could be released or the endotoxins, and that helps the body again calm down, and then you're getting less reactions. So looking at it in terms of immune damage, going slower, and then adding some things that help modulate the immune system generally help overcome that problem. Did that help?
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Super.
It did. Thank you.
That was good to know. Thanks for asking that.
Well, I thank
So
everyone.
can you repeat your repeat your website?
Oh,
Sure.
go ahead.
FlourishInAustin.com. We are also, we are having a webinar that I'm opening up to everybody. It's happening next, it's a live webinar happening next Friday, April 17th at 5 p.m. Central Time. I'm calling it Healthy Hour, Happy Hour. From 5 to 6:30 p.m. The nutritionist, our functional nutritionist, Angela, and I will be talking all about mindfulness, gut health, immunity, and nutrition, and some really easy nutritional do's and don'ts, and just really trying to reach folks at home, beyond even practitioners, just to give them a sense of, hey, this, when I talked about that neuroception of danger, this stuff is really happening to you. There's fear in you. And Angela is beautiful the way she talks about how to nourish your microbiome with food. And so anyway, so that's on the website too. And if y'all feel comfortable, maybe referring your patients to it as a way to kind of get some food for thought into them on, now that they're home and cooking more for themselves, what are some things that they can do? And so that's on the website as well. It's $10 to attend. I made it super cheap right now. And there's even a promo code if you know anybody that really needs some help in this way, even if it's just to even develop a little bit of mindfulness right now during hard times, that there's also a promo code to make it free if somebody was recently unemployed or having some financial hard times.
Super. Okay, last
Great.
opportunity for any questions.
Hello, Tracy.
Go ahead.
Tracy, yeah, okay. Dr. Sam here, I'm so sorry I'm late today to the meeting, to the webinar. Could you just ask her to, I don't even know her name, to repeat the website? I missed that.
Okay.
I'm just tuning in.
Okay.
My patients. Yeah, please, if I
Sure,
could just get that.
Flourish in Austin, all one word.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
And I will put it.
.com.
I'll also
Yeah.
put her website on the YouTube posting so that you'll have that when I send out the recording. So that's a good idea. Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
Cyndi and Tracy.
Okay.
That was
Sure,
very informative. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. It was my pleasure. So happy to be here for y'all. Everybody stay safe.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye, Tracy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Be safe, everyone.
Okay, bye.
You too.
Bye-bye.
So, yeah, bye. Okay.